Hey everybody, I'm Anna McEwen. And now for Bob Switzer with the Epic Narrative.
Well, this is it, ladies and gentlemen. This is it. This is going to be our last episode of Season 3 of the Epic Narrative. How awesome is this? I'm very excited. I really am. I think we continue to learn and grow. I appreciate those of you that have been faithful listeners, and I appreciate those of you that discovered us and have hooked up more recently. Some of you honestly have joined us recently and have binged the seasons, which is like such a huge commitment. Season 1 is basically 60 hours. It's not quite, I think, if you actually did the math, it's close. 60 hours on the life of David, which is unheard of. I literally can't find anything on the internet, anything anywhere close to that many hours on the life of David. So like that alone blows my mind. That then there's other people who are like, have not only binged season 1, they've binged season 2, and now season 3. Like, you guys are awesome. Everybody's awesome. I'm just so happy. I also want to thank my wife specifically for this particular season, because everything was recorded in our RV. She literally had no choice but to listen to the entire season of the Epic Narrative. I'm not saying whether or not she's ever listened to an entire season of the Epic Narrative. That's, between her and God. But I don't blame her if she didn't. I honestly don't know, because I don't want to know. But she didn't have a choice this round. She literally had to put up with it. And honestly, she often had to alter her plans for the hour or so that it takes me. It takes me a little bit longer than that, because I have to set it all up in the bedroom and then tear it all down, etc. So she has to alter her plans sometimes in order for this to happen. So big shout out to Lori Switzer. She is amazing. I know. I keep promising you guys bonus episodes of like me telling you our story of how we got together. Maybe I will. Who knows? Because as I stand here right now in this moment, I've thought many times that the next season would be, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and who knows, it might still be. But I don't know if I should do like a season of those or call each book its own season, which also seems weird. So we've got some research and development to do, but I'm sure by the time you hear this, I will have made the decision and probably already started recording it, because that's how I roll. I spend months reading, taking notes, reading, and I really like that. And then I spend a couple months recording. And after that, it's all up to Brian and the amazing production team and promotional team. They are amazing. So shout out again to Brian and to my amazing daughter, Anna. I just love her voice. If I could, let her do the talking, I'd do it, because you guys would have a much better experience. Especially those of you who listen to me like with earphones on. That has to be, I can't imagine the articulation that you must hear out of my voice, because when I listen to it, I think, oh my gosh, that's what you sound like. Anna sounds so much better, and I'm sure you all agree. But on with the show. Oh yeah, Bob the engineer is like, what about me? Bob, I literally go nowhere without you. So I can't imagine life without you, because you are me and we are together all the time. And it's fun. I like my engineer. I do. I don't know what I would have ever done if I was as a child. If I let people know that I was hearing voices, I probably would have given me drugs to shut them down, and I would have spent my whole life without one of my best friends. I'm sorry, because I do know that there are people who do hear those voices. Like, I do know that schizophrenia is legitimate. I know that bipolar activity is legitimate. I have worked with people who have both of those conditions and they work hard to combat them. So I don't mean to make light of that. I really don't. Sorry about that. Occasionally, a listener or two will reach out and be like, "Hey, Bob, you don't forget, like, this is real," and and they're right. I do know that it's real, and although sometimes I have fun with it, I don't mean to belittle it. Now on with the show. We're gonna for those of you who have always listened, you know that I often tape up my passage for the day so that I can refer to it easily and quickly as we talk. But today, because I'm going to make this the final episode, we have got 5 entire chapters. And I want you to know, if I was going to tape this up, I don't know if I could find all the pieces. I mean, we've got dozens of pages here of copied scripture. Ooh, that reminds me, if I'm on the road, I need to find a printer soon for the next whatever it is I do. Anyways, so here we go. Exodus 35. Moses assembled the whole Israelite community and said to them, "These are the things the Lord has commanded you to do. For 6 days work is to be done, but the 7th day shall be your holy day, a day of Sabbath." Sabbath. We call it Sabbath, but it's always fun. You ever been in a church where the preacher wants to sound like, well, I guess he wants to sound more important than everybody, but he'll say like Sabbath or Adam instead of Adam. Anyways, I have. They're not impressive as they like to think that they are, and they're funny to listen to. At that point, I just roll my eyes like, oh, great. All right, so anyways, a day of Sabbath, the rest to the Lord. Whoever does anything works will be put to death. Wait, whoa. Do not light a fire in any of your dwellings on the Sabbath. Whoa, death? We're just going to start out by killing people? Come on, Jesus. That can't be true. Is that true? Well, it's in the Word. Well, here at the Epic Narrative, we take a look at the Word. So here we go. Moses gathers everyone. This is after 40 days on the mountain again. This is with him with the glowing face thing going on. I'm guessing his hands and feet glowed too, but generally those were covered up by robes, so people didn't see him, but he glowed. Honestly, I'd like that. Internally, like if I had the opportunity, and I don't know if I ever will, like to get that in tune with the frequency of my Creator, to really be that vibration of God, to the point where when I'm done hanging out with him one day, I just start glowing. That would be a lot of fun just for me. Now, I know that there would be many people that will want to monetize it, and they'd be like, "Bob, we got to get you on YouTube. Bob, we got to get you booked on all the biggest conferences in the world. You glow. Oh, the money that can be made in the name of Jesus." Well, I am thankful Moses didn't have the same approach. I don't think I would. I'd like to think I wouldn't. I'd like to think it would be something I would honestly enjoy. I find it fascinating that Moses covered himself up so that he wouldn't offend people or cause them to be weirded out by what the Lord had to say. I honestly think that there's a lot of people who use things that they've learned in the presence of God, and they present them in such a way that it weirds people out who listen to it, and they think to themselves, that's just weird. And the people who weirded them out are thinking, oh, yes, the Lord is drawing them in because I have weirded them out with my special vocabulary, often called Christianese. And I think, you know what? Maybe we should take a lesson from Moses and cover that up when we're with people who might think it's weird. I got to cough again, everyone. I'm not sure what. Oh. Well, I'm back. Not that any of you knew that I was gone anywhere, but I had to go and just like cough like crazy and then try and get a drink of water and see if I can fix this. But we will press on. So while he's gone for this 40 days, right, no one made a calf to replace him. Everybody was like, yeah, that was a bad plan. So they stayed super chill. And he goes And he starts out with the day of rest. That's the first thing he starts out with. He doesn't start out. Now, this is in essence, a different rhythm of the rules. This is, and some would say in the last chapter, right, we had another breakdown of the commandments, another bullet points of the commandments. And some say that basically Moses kept changing the commandments, and they would indicate, and I'm not saying that these people aren't going to get to heaven or anything, but as they read the Bible, they look at it and go, wait, there's like 3 different times that the commandments are given, and they're all given in different orders. And that's where I would say, literarily speaking, from a narrative, I should say, from a narrative perspective, I would say they're not 3 different sets of commandments. It's just that the commandments were never meant to be a set 10. I know that sounds blasphemous to so many people. It was meant to be love God and love people. That's what it was meant to be. We turned it into a set. And we liked the first round where it was 10 very clear ones. But here he starts out with the day of rest. And then I honestly think he adds the death sentence and the the whole, no, don't even start a fire. Because honestly, the Pharisees kept going on this. Remember, the Pharisees would add nuances to the law for the next 1,000 years. And by the time Jesus showed up, there were, 690 or whatever, 647 commandments that were all tied into the first 10. And their whole point was, we've improved the commandments of God so that you can't displease him if you keep all of them. I mean, honestly, it's insane. But it's the way a religious mind thinks. It's the way slavery mind thinks. There's just more rules. Let's come up with more rules. And how many times have you been in a church where a board or denominational, regional directors or whatever, my mind's going completely blank of all the different names that they have. But basically, it's a group of men who basically sit around and decide on new rules that need to be kept in order to keep everyone happy, in order to keep the denominational presence, in order to keep us moving forward, in order to keep us unscathed and unmarked by the world. And that's, I understand the heart, but it destroys the heart. The heart of the people adding more to the rules. I understand in some ways they're like, we just want to make God happy, but they miss the heart of the rules, which was, let's do away with the rules, because if you're in relationship with God, if you're into the intimate connection that God's offering, you won't need the rules because you just be like him. Listen, God does not control his people any more than he kills his people. Because if he did, it would decimate the goodness of God. So I totally think Moses could be adding stuff in here and not necessarily God being like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. I forgot to put that in there. Thanks for adding that. The death penalty, that's a great idea. I just don't see that in the character of God. Verse 4, Moses said to the whole community, this is what the Lord has commanded you. From what you have, take an offering for the Lord. Everyone, okay, focus now, everyone. Focus. This is the phrase. Everyone who is willing to bring to the Lord an offering of gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, scarlet, yarn, and fine linen, goat hair, ram skin, dyed red, other types of durable leather, Arcadia wood, olive oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil, and the fragrance of incense, and onyx stones and other gems to be mounted on the ephod and the breastplate. All who are skilled among you who are to come and make everything the Lord has commanded in the tabernacle and its tents and its covering and its clasps and its frames and its crossbars and its posts and its bases, the ark and all its poles and its atonement and cover and curtain that shields it. Verse 21. And everyone who was willing and whose heart moved them came and brought an offering to the Lord for the work of the tent and the meeting and all its services and the sacraments and the garments. Verse 22, all who were willing, men and women alike, came and brought gold jewelry and all kinds of brooches, earrings, rings, and ornaments. Verse 29, all Israelite men and women who were willing brought the Lord a free will offerings for the work of the Lord through Moses, work of the Lord through Moses who had commanded him to do so. Sorry. Wow. I was like reading it and my brain was like, that's not what it says. Focus. These offerings were free will. It was people who wanted to give. This was different from the half shekel census that was taken. Remember, we talked about that several episodes ago, where a half shekel was collected from everybody because everyone had equal value. And we took a census based on the number of half shekels that arrived, not on the people that came to bring them. So everyone brought a half shekel. That was the census. This one involved all kinds of things: gold, silver, all kinds of precious stones, woods, linens, raw materials, jewelry, leather, animal skins, spices, dyes, oils. It involved anything you wanted to bring, as much as you wanted to bring. But it was willing. Those who were willing brought it. Those who were willing, if you want to. If you want to participate, if you want to be a part of, if you are going to join us, these are the things that we need. The skilled labor was volunteer. All who heard went home and debated and discussed and evaluated and decided, yes, we are willing. What do we want to give? How much do we want to give? And they returned with that offering. Verse 23, all who were willing. Verse 29, it was a free will offering. I mean, it's a ton of fun to read about. And then in verse 30, right, Moses said to the Israelites, see, the Lord has chosen Bezalel, son of Uriah, the son of Hur, the tribe of Judah. He is to be what? Filled with the Spirit of God, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, and all kinds of skills to make artistic designs, for work in gold and silver and bronze, to cut and set stones, to work in wood and engage in all kinds of artistic crafts. This he was given, both him and Oholib, son of Azmarach, of the tribe of Dan, the ability to teach others. What? He has filled them with the skill to do all kinds of work as engravers, designers, embroiderers in blue and purple and scarlet yarn and fine linen, and weavers, and all kinds of skilled workers and designers. I mean, this is the type of thing that God's wisdom brings. God's wisdom brings all kinds of creative arts. This is what I love about these verses. Everything about this screams that we haven't done enough to encourage the artistic world. Back in the day, artists were considered prophetic workers of God. They were paid attention to. They were considered people who understood and read or heard frequencies of creation that no one else could. And then during the Middle Ages, they were co-opted into providing art for the church as penance, as payment for their sins. And the artists like Michelangelo and Monet and others would do things out of obligation. And then eventually artists were shunned from the church. Most evangelical communities pushed the artisans out, and the only place they could find community was amongst people who didn't worship God. and their artistic expression was left outside the church. It was like the church created its own subculture of subpar artists. I'm not saying all of them are subpar. I'm not saying none of them should be watched. I'm not saying that everyone that's up front doing prophetic art should have taken an art class or two before they got up there. I'm not saying any of that. Although some of that might be true, I'm not saying everyone is true. Those verses there to me just scream that the art of the church needs to be reinvigorated, because we need to honor the fact that the wisdom for artistic expression comes from God. So these two guys are called by God. They just not only were given massive amounts of awareness of talent, but they were also given the ability to teach others, because this was going to be a large community affair. And you had to be willing to work. You weren't manipulated. You weren't expected. You weren't pressed into it. Here, I'll read it for you. Chapter 36. I can't say their names. So Bezalel and Oholab, and every skilled person to whom the Lord had given skill and ability to know how to carry it out of the work of the construction of the sanctuary, are to do the work just as the Lord commanded. Then the Lord summoned those two guys. Moses summoned those two guys. And every skilled worker whom the Lord had given ability and who was willing to do the work. Get that? Just having the skill didn't mean that you had to do the work. They weren't, just because you were an artist, you weren't expected to be there. You weren't pressured in to be there. You weren't, man, I talked to somebody this week who had been in a church for years. They left, just worn out, just used up. They went to visit a church, and within an hour after the service, people were like, "Oh, you're a drummer? Oh, you should join the worship team." And the guy's thinking, good grief, like, I've been here 2 hours, like I visited your church for the first time, and now what do you want to do? Start using me again. God from the very beginning is like, only if you're willing. I'm about your heart, not about your skill. I give all these skills because I love them. I love artistic expression of who I am. I am a very creative God, and creativity is a form of wisdom that I give out to everyone. But if you're willing, you can participate. So Moses gives them this pile of raw material. It's crazy. I mean, this stuff had to be organized, right? Everybody brings an offering. They bring gold and silver and precious stones. Who knows what they were in, if they were set and stuff, if they were just raw material, like all kinds of stuff. They brought wood, like logs. I don't even know. Tree limbs, linens, raw materials of all sorts, jewelry, leather, animal skins. Some dyed, some not. They brought spices, buckets of it, bags of it, barrels of it, jars of it. They brought dye. Who knows what that came in? I assume it's a liquid. I don't know. And they brought oils. I know that was liquid. And they just collect this stuff in a we'll call it a warehouse tent, like just this massive tent. Well, somebody's got to organize all this. Someone's got to, in essence, take inventory, decide how much of each raw material we have. And then most of the stuff isn't usable right away, right? All the gold has to be melted down because it's going to be painted or the the posts are going to be dipped in it. You got precious stones that need to be cut, which takes precision. Okay, guys, they weren't out there with like Stone Age tools. They had the ability to cut stone, precious stone, without crushing it. Like, let's give them some credit for having some legitimate skills. So they had to evaluate what they had. They had to organize what they had. They had to separate what they had. They had to put out priorities. What gets built first? That's really what the two head dudes were about. Not only did they know how to do everything, but they had the ability to teach everyone what needed to be done. And then they had to separate everything out and put together a timeline. And then probably a set of deadlines. Then they had to figure out workspace. Then they had to make sure everybody had tools. And then they had to get supervision for what was going on. And then they had to get reports. How are things going? They had to find the time to do this. Were these artists allowed to take pieces home and start and do it on their own pace? Did they do it in the warehouse? Did they have a separate tent where the gold layers were, where the not bricklayers, where the stone cutters were, those who were milling the wood, where did they work? This is not like, hey, go build the temple or tabernacle. This really literally got the whole nation involved, and they started to get more excited. And in verse 3 of chapter 36, we see more people began to bring more stuff because there was momentum building here. People got excited. They were seeing others bringing things. They were listening to the craftsmen talk about how involved everything was, how intricate everything was. They were seeing things being done and put together, and they wanted to be a part of it. Who wouldn't want to be a part of it? When you see God doing stuff, trust me, your spirit tracks with it, and immediately it wants to do more. It wants to give more. I've been in services and in conferences where momentum is built, and it's bizarre. People track with a particular theme, or in some cases, out of nowhere, somebody would say like, "Hey, we're going to try and raise funds for this. Anybody want to give to this? They can," and the momentum builds, and pretty soon, it's overwhelming what ends up coming in, and that's exactly what happened. Now, you can try to manufacture this kind of excitement, and I've been around preachers and teachers and ministry leaders that try to start stuff, that try to build excitement. You can't build this kind of excitement without vision. You can't build it without actual leadership, but there are those we'll call it with the titles of leadership that try to start stuff. Literally, they'll just start building something or remodeling something. And they'll do it as they'll call it. This is funny, but I mean it's funny because it's Christianese. But they'll say we're gonna start this project. We're gonna start this building. We're gonna remodel our building because we're gonna do it as a prophetic act that God is doing something. Well, listen. God's doing something. There's no doubt about that. God's always doing something. But you can't just start building. Although they do, and they wonder, why are we wallowing in debt? Why can't we finish this project? Why when we got done with the project, does it not come anywhere close to what we were hoping for? Probably because you're the one who started it. You're the one who had to finish it. And God was like, well, you can do what you want. Like, I'm fine. Like, God wasn't punishing you, but the favor of God is on the things in which he's clearly involved. And that's what happened here. You can't manipulate people to give and to volunteer in service of God or give in provision for God in God's house. I mean, you can, but it doesn't end well. It just doesn't end well. It's insane. So this is very natural. Leaders excitement, and the leadership isn't trying to fake what's going on. Now the rest of chapter 36, man, they go through all kinds of details about what they're building and what it looks like, and God bless them. I mean, I'm glad they have all these details. I just read it and think, good golly, did we really have to know all this? But I guess we did. But for the sake of the narrative, we're just going to kind of roll through this. So in chapter 30, the rest of chapter 36 and all of chapter 37, this many rings were made, this many stones were cut, this many planks of wood were cut, this many curtains were made, this is many curtains were sewed together, this is how many stitches were sewed together. Like, it just goes super detailed. Feel free to read it. Bob's like, That's cheating. I know. Well, we're done with chapter 37. Now on to chapter 38. Told you we're going to finish this. Chapter 38. This is an inventory of what was used. And they just go through. They built an altar of burnt offering of acacia wood, 3 cubits high. It was 5 cubits long. It was 5 cubits wide. They had a horn on each end of the 4 corners, and the horns of the altar were made of one piece, and they were overlaid the altar with bronze, and they made utensils of bronze. It continues. Now, I do want to pause for a little bit here. Chapter 21. These are the amounts of the materials used for the tabernacle. The tabernacle of the covenant of law were recorded at Moses' command by the Levites under the direction of yada, yada, yada. The total amount of gold from the wave offerings used for all the work of the sanctuary was 29 talents and 730 shekels, according to that. That's a whole lot of gold. That is no small amount. The people were told to stop bringing the offerings. The silver obtained of those communities that were brought, 100 talents and 1,700 shekels. From everyone who had crossed over, those counted 21 years or old or more, totaled 603,550 men. The 100 talents of silver were used to cast the bases of the sanctuary and the curtains, and the 100 bases of the 100 talents, 1 talent for each base. That's like a lot of weight. And they used the 1,700 shekels to make the hooks of the posts and the overlay of the tops of the posts, and the bronze of the waves of the cumin were 70 talents, and they used it to make the bases. I mean, it just keeps on going. You see, when God's involved in something, there's always abundance. They were told to stop bringing. People were so excited, they just kept bringing more and more. People who had given gave more. People who hadn't given were drawn in. See, when God's involved, people are drawn to community. They're drawn to each other. They want to express the goodness of God in the extravagance and abundance. Generosity and kindness. Hospitality and love. These are the characteristics of the kingdom, and the tabernacle was going to reflect that just in the mere beauty and wealth that was expressed in the tabernacle building. In 39, the ephod is made, the breastplate is made. These are the uniforms that were meant for the priestly garments are made. Other priests' garments were made. I'm trying to just doing a quick scan here. The ark, everything was there. The temple and the table with all its articles in there. The pure gold, the light stand, the altar, the courtyard. All this work was done as the Lord had commanded Moses. Verse 43. Moses inspected the work and saw that it had been done just as the Lord had commanded. So Moses blessed them. Now, it's fascinating to me that in the details of construction, Moses went over to see it when it was done. Moses didn't micromanage the development of all this. He expressed to those 2 leaders that were mentioned earlier, he expressed to them the details. He gave them the details that the Lord had written down. He had it on the stone tablets. He's like, this is what it's supposed to look like. And as I tried to humorously express, it's hard. It takes a special mind, a creative, artistic mind, to see something in print or to hear something described and then know what to do with the raw materials to make it so. Moses didn't micromanage. He waited until it was done, and then he went to inspect it. When I think about a lot of works that are done, 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 a I think there are a lot of pastors who could take a lesson from Moses. First of all, I don't think a lot of the pastors that are called pastors are actually pastors because they're more concerned about the business of the church than the people of the church. And pastors have a natural intuition for people rather than the business. But that's another whole story for another whole day. But I think those in leadership could take a lesson from Moses. He released people, but more than that, he gave them the authority to make it happen. And there are many pastors who like to release people to do the work, but they won't give them the authority to make a decision because they want the authority to rest on the pastor, the one at the top of the pyramid. But everything they did was exactly the way it had been described. And Moses, of course, had been the only one who had actually seen the tabernacle when he was in heaven. As the Lord described it to him, he walked through an actual rendition of it there in heaven. It had to be spectacular. And Moses was able to walk through and say, yep, that's exactly the way I remember it. It's amazing to me. Now, I'm not saying Moses didn't talk to any of the supervisors or the overseers. I'm not saying that he avoided watching everything that was going on. He just didn't micromanage it, or he wouldn't need to go inspect it. It was a pretty awesome thing. Now, in chapter 40, it said, Then the Lord said to Moses, set up the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, on the first day of the first month. Moses had to set up the temple. Again, he was the only one who had ever seen it set up because he saw it in heaven. And so the details of that are all in chapter 40. And in verse 33, it says Moses was finished. And I imagine it's a lot like somebody who is has to set up somebody else's apartment. It's like, I know exactly the way I want it. They describe it to you. You get it. Then you go and set it up, but you don't get to live there. Moses set that whole thing up, but he wasn't going to be a priest. He wasn't going to be able to walk in there. It's pretty fascinating, really. In verse 34, it says, Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled on it, and the glory of the Lord filled the temple. Now, we just read not read in the last chapter. We just mentioned in the last episode, the tent of meeting was the place that Moses had always gone, and the cloud of the Lord, of the glory of the Lord, would come and sit there, and he would talk to Moses face to face, like a friend talks to a friend. After all of this work, Moses sets the whole thing up. The tent of meeting is in place. The Lord comes and he sits there. And now Moses can't go. Now it's somebody else's job. Now, some of you could say, well, that's, because the importance of the priests and those that are called to ministry, and Moses was called to lead, but not called to ministry. Okay, fine. Pat yourself on the back if you want with that. But this is the way I look at it. The kingdom is a kingdom that moves. God is a God of relationship. If a relationship isn't moving, then it's dead. How many relationships do you have you had in your life where it seemed like they were going to go on forever, but they slowly died because they didn't grow? They were basically a relationship of an event or a period of time. Now, sometimes you develop a relationship during a period of time and they maintain throughout the years. Why is that? Because you maintain them throughout the years. Well, in the relationship with God, it moves. You can't always keep doing every little thing that you've always ever done for the Lord, or you're not moving. You're just going in circles. I once heard a preacher say, and I absolutely loved it. He said, the only two people who see the same thing over and over are the people who aren't moving or the people that are going in circles. And I was like, oh, snap. That's what happens with a lot of people in their Christian life. We don't move, or we just keep going in the same circles over and over and over again, and we see the same things over and over and over again. Moses had the opportunity, right, for at least a year, maybe more, to sit at the tent of meeting, interact with God, go out and teach the people, judge their difficulties or whatever, the discrepancies that they were going through. He had a lot of roles. And under Jethro's leadership, he dispersed his role of judging to many other judges, and he only dealt with the really tough ones. And now, after a year of building, he lets others do what he used to do. He doesn't try to hang on to it. He doesn't try to control them or tell them, listen, this is what I always say to God when I go to the tender meeting. This is the way that I approach God when I go to the tender meeting. No, I'm not saying they didn't ask him and say, hey, Moses, what's it like? And I'm sure he described it, but I'm guessing he didn't tell them exactly how to do it. It's a beautiful thing to have that kind of leader. In the travel, verse 36, in all the travels of the Israelites, whenever the cloud lifted from above the tabernacle, they would set out. But if the cloud did not lift, they would not set out until the day it did lift. So the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and fire was over it by night. And in the sight of the Israelites, all of their travels, they could see it. So you have, of course, like I said before, you have shade during the day. You have warmth and light at night. And it came from a place where ideally you're drawn to God. You're invited to communicate. Now, granted, they could also be intimidating. I mean, I've been around super friendly, outgoing people, and I think they would never talk to me. And I've been told I'm the same way. People have. I remember the first few times they told me, I thought that can't be true. But it's true. My outgoing personality caused people to actually hold back from meeting me because they thought, this guy is way over the top. This guy would not talk to me. This guy is not interested in me. So I've learned to temper my emotional outbursts and my enthusiasm when I meet new people because I don't want to scare them off. But I do understand how something this big could be intimidating to people. Now, we can look into more details of the sacrificial system, and we probably will in the next season. There is more to learn. There's also, a lot of crazy theologies that have come out of it and beliefs about God and who he is and what he's like and how to keep him happy. I don't know what all that will look like, but I do know we are going to wrap up season 3 right now. I, again, really appreciate those of you that have stayed committed to the Epic Narrative. I appreciate those of you that support us and encourage us. And I look forward to seeing you next season on the Epic Narrative. Thank you, everyone.
Don't go anywhere. We've got Bob Thoughts.
Hey, everybody. Congratulations. You made it through the book of Exodus. I just think it was a lot of fun, I think. And so much fun that we're going to go ahead and do the rest of the books of the law on Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And that's coming up in season 4. I am recording that currently. That should be ready to go by September. So during the summer, over the next few weeks, well, it's summer now. I mean, I don't know when you might be listening to this, but in our current situation, we're going to take a few weeks here to kind of finish recording and then maybe set up a few other things. There's some technological things that are available to us that we're going to try and also put together during the summer. But we should be launching season 4 probably in September. And that should get you through at least the school year. I don't think it's going to be a full year of recording because we're not breaking down every jot and tittle of the law. We're sticking to the story of the law. We're sticking to the relational impacts of the law and how religion stole all of that. And along the way, we actually have some really interesting opportunities to interact with translation and tradition and culture, as we always do on the Epic Narrative, because it's uncanny how much of that gets impacted by those who do the translating and applying of Scripture, right? All right, so between us all, we should get it done by September. I really hope that everybody's having a great day, and really appreciate your loyalty and your love. And I look forward to seeing you all again on the Epic Narrative. Thanks for stopping by, and feel free to reach out. All those ways to contact us, feel free to contact us. And if you can support us financially, what a blessing that'll be. All right, everyone. I love you. I'll see you soon on the Epic Narrative.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.